So welcome everyone to this edition of the BVSSH community. We've had a bit of a theme going the last few sessions, if you've been with us for the last couple, all around AI. It's a topic that you can't avoid at the moment. So it's one that we've been talking quite a bit about ourselves. So the topic for this session is actually something that Mark, Ruma, and I have co-authored and put together. So the theme here is all around kind of an AI-enabled enterprise. And to give you, I guess, a little bit of background as to the report. So this is actually something, and I'll put up the QR code in just a minute, if you've not seen it before, but this is actually something that we pulled together as a version 1 last year. We've just updated it, so this is now version 2 or edition 2. And the AI-enabled enterprise report, which we'll cover some of it with you today, basically was a way to help us to think about what are the key things that we need in order to actually have an AI-enabled enterprise. So knowing that AI is not just a technology change, it's actually needing us to redesign our work, look at how we operate, how we organize, how we behave within the operating model. But it requires us to do that very differently from how we've been kind of using technology in the past. So Ruma and I first put our heads together on this one, and we created a bit of a foundation for that. We then elaborated it further with a group of senior leaders from across sector based on a network that we host here at Sooner, Safer, Happier. And we've built on that experience since then. Edition 2 has had inputs from kind of recent work that we've been doing across different organizations, and Mark's authored parts of that. So that's effectively what we're going to be going through today. That's the topic for the session. But just before we kind of get into it, I might just ask Ruma, I see you. Maybe you can introduce yourself first, just to give everyone a little bit of context on who you are. And Mark, you'll do the same, and I'll do that because I think that helps provide a little bit of color on the report. So Ruma, please tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Maria. Hi, everyone. So I've been in better ways of working in transformation space for quite some time and have done a lot of work in system of work improvement space over the last few years. And very recently, I've obviously become particularly curious about how AI is impacting the system of workspace, right from strategy and planning through to work definition, prioritization, delivery, governance, and continuous improvement throughout the life cycle. So really looking forward to sharing our learnings and insights with all of you, as well as to learn from all of you based on what you are experiencing and observing in your organizations.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ruma. And Mark, who will apologize for his voice. He's caught a little bit of something, the winter that's going around. But Mark, did you want to introduce yourself?
No, thanks, Maria. Yeah, so apologies in advance. I'm starting to lose my voice, so hopefully I don't lose it through here. But yeah, my name's Mark Payne, for those who I haven't met before. Had the pleasure of being involved in a whole of organization transformation in around 2017, I think it was, where we evolved the operating model, ways of working, culture and environment across the entire organization. I had the pleasure of working within that organization to ultimately design, implement and embed it, and now gladly share the learnings, insights with multiple organizations and industries who are looking to achieve the same. And yeah, most recently, as Marie indicated, as part of authoring this latest edition, it was based on some learnings and insights from working with an organization who are really starting to think about how they embed and leverage AI from strategy through to execution. So yeah, you'll see some of those thoughts throughout the paper, plus what we're going to talk about. Back to you, Maria.
Thanks, Mark. And so for those of you who I have not yet had the chance to meet, I'm Maria Muir. I lead Sooner, Safer, Happier here in Asia Pacific. So we have the great pleasure of hosting all of these various network and community events, which I take immense joy in, because for me it is all about shared learning, but we also do some consulting work with leaders and organizations. But all of it is kind of inspired behind the purpose of helping leaders and teams and all of you to deliver better outcomes, to execute on the strategies that you need to, and to ultimately create a more sustainable way of working, or a more humane world of work. So that's a little bit about us. I've also had many years of doing transformations, thinking about enterprise change, ways of working over a handful of different sectors. And so the thing here for us and for me when thinking about this report was, what have we learned from the past? Because there's actually been a handful of things from digital, and how might that then apply to AI, but then also then what needs to then be different, because AI is different. So let's get into it. So here is the QR code for the enterprise report, if you haven't seen it yet. What I will say is download it, give a good read. We'll cover bits of it today, the majority of it. We don't have all the answers, and no one does. AI is moving too quickly for there to be all the answers. So all we have is learnings. And collectively, we need to keep pace together. So that's why we've updated this for version 2 just in 6 months' time from releasing version 1. And what you'll see is effectively it's a series of patterns and anti-patterns, which we'll cover today, as well as some questions for you to then kind of provoke your own thinking. So that's the report. The agenda for us today is to basically cover off the house of AI, and I'll explain what that is in just in a minute. But that's basically the foundation of the report. Ruma will then talk about starting with intent. So this is, why AI? Why is it important? What do we need to be thinking about even before we kind of get into it? Because really that's the starting point for thinking and setting up an AI-enabled enterprise. And then, as I mentioned, we'll cover off the patterns, the anti-patterns, and these are then our learnings. And we really want this to be a two-way conversation, so not really a presentation. And again, with the spirit of the report, this is about shared learning. So Mark will be monitoring the chat. So please feel free to jump in with comments, with your questions, to build on the thinking, with your reflections, with your stories, or to challenge. We really want this to be kind of two-way. So that's the plan for us. So to set up then what the House of AI is, this is actually really about setting up the right kind of foundations for an AI-enabled enterprise. And so I'll talk about kind of the House of AI, but basically it's the 7 core components that you need to be thinking about when thinking about AI. So it's not just about sprinkling AI on the top of your core processes or kind of in your operating model. It's about actually ensuring these 7 components are being considered, because they will actually need to change, and very likely that they will need to change. So there is, and I'm not sure who's seen it, but Mark will drop the link into the chat. But something that's maybe for you to watch afterwards that's quite funny is a talk that John Smart did called the AI Crap Talk, or the AI Certified Really AI Practitioner. And basically, John delivers 15 minutes, basically highlighting the anti-patterns of AI. It's really quite funny. So I highly recommend that, but it kind of brings to life some of these things too. So the House of AI is built like an actual house. So it starts off with the foundation. So foundation 1 is all around the mindset and behaviors. So what we're trying to do here is foster trust and have safe human and AI collaboration. So this is about the right mindset and behaviors to then go into this. Then the next kind of layer to it, or the second component of the house, is purpose. So were we clear on the why and the what of AI? Kind of why are we trying to use it? What's its scope? How does it fit with strategy? Those types of things. The next component then is around capability. So we know here that the intent or the foundation here is that really AI capability needs to be at scale because it needs to be for everyone. As of the last kind of 6 months, the learning is that AI is now a teammate. So it's not just a productivity enhancer, but it's a teammate. So how do we think about that in team design? So that's the third component. The next one then is around technical excellence. So how do we have the right kind of tech quality and the right data and maintain the right architecture? And this needs to be continuous in order to then have and unlock the power of AI. So that's kind of the fourth one. The next one then is all around governance. How we think about governing risk, compliance, the ethics behind AI, and that needs to be embedded, and those controls need to be embedded in the work so that we can have that continuous visibility and traceability. The sixth one there is around the delivery approach. So gone are the days of traditional projects that take 3 years to deliver. The default now is experimentation, and that really needs to be how we're then thinking about AI to then scale it. And then the last component here is, and it's at the top of the house because ultimately what we're striving towards from all these foundational pieces is actually continuous improvement. So when I think about this, it's how do we become a learning organization? How do we maintain that curiosity? How do we continue to experiment, learn, sense, adapt in all aspects of it? And then how does AI help us with that? So that is the 7 components of the house. What I will say is, as we've been learning in our work and talking with leaders, this is easy to talk about. This is actually really hard to implement. And what I thought I would share with you is actually a benchmark that we then did in November based on this House of AI to then kind of show you across sectors where was each relative to those 7 kind of key foundational pieces that were needed. And what did that look like? And so the interesting things from the findings 6 months ago, and as you can see, financial services and kind of technology companies definitely were setting the pace or kind of leading the way. So you can see all of the greens. So green means more maturity or kind of more advanced in that foundational component versus the yellows to the oranges, and the deeper the orange gets, the lower the score. So you can see financial services and technology kind of leading the way there. But the biggest gap here, and this is across industries, is not quite so much mindset and behaviors, or so they might have thought, but was actually all around execution, and execution around capability, technical excellence, governance, delivery approach, and continuous improvement. 6 months ago, that was kind of the core area that needed to be looked at. And then the 2 weakest capabilities were governance and continuous improvement. And so that might not have been a surprise, and that wasn't a surprise 6 months ago, because how we make decisions, how we steer, and how we manage risk, often that's heavy-handed. So governance was that the challenges there, and then continuous improvement. I think there's often many leaders that I speak with where we're too busy doing the work and not enough time spent on improvement. So that kind of tension is starting to bubble up in the system. So this is what it was 6 months ago. And what we are just in the process of updating that baseline, because we've just updated edition 2 of this report. We're gathering kind of further inputs to refresh that. And as Ruma mentioned to me the other week, 6 months in the time of AI is like dinosaur age. So we really need to get a refresh on that. So I invite everyone here who's participating. This is a QR code to participate in that survey if you choose. And your results will then be included in that updated baseline. And again, it's a survey based on the 7 components. There are 5 questions per each. And it's based on a scale of never, rarely, neutral, often, always. It should take you about 10 minutes to complete. And once you complete that, you'll get the results back once we've kind of compiled the baseline. So I encourage everyone to do that, and Mark will drop the link in the chat as well. So something for you to look forward to kind of post this session once we unpack a little bit more around the House of AI. So I might then hand over to Ruma. Ruma, can you maybe talk us through starting with intent and thinking about what are we optimizing for? Because this is such a foundational bit before we even get into the 7 components of the house.
Yep. Thank you, Maria. If you can go to the next slide, please. Yep, thank you. So whatever industry or sector our organizations are operating in, when we think about improving how value gets delivered or how work gets done within our organization, the goal actually never changes. What we are trying to optimize for is to deliver most value in the shortest time with the least effort, with quality, safety, and happiness. In short, we want to deliver better value sooner, safer, and happier. Can you go to the next slide, please, Maria? So these are the 5 components, and you can look at them as a balanced scorecard for your organization. Now, going back to our topic for today, which is AI, what's interesting that most AI conversations that we hear today focus a lot on efficiency. You'll hear questions like, how can we do things faster? How can we cut costs? How can we reduce some headcount? How can we reduce effort? Now, while all these things are important, if that is all we are talking about, then we are actually missing out the whole point in regards to what AI can unlock for our organizations. The real opportunity lies in improving the entire system of work across these 5 dimensions. And I won't go through every metric on this slide, but I'll give you a quick example of what this could look like in practice. So the case study that I want to refer to is what IKEA did recently. What they did was they introduced a chatbot called Billy. And Billy was handling routine customer service queries such as order tracking, answering product questions, the easy work. So then the question for IKEA became, if AI can handle these routine tasks, AI can do this lower value work, we have got some humans, precious humans, freed up with capacity to do some higher value work. So what they did next was they reskilled these thousands of employees into interior design advisory roles. So these people then started helping customers designing their kitchens, their bedrooms, their living spaces. That created a whole new revenue stream for IKEA, which was worth more than 1 billion euros. That's a big number. So that's a great example of how AI can be used to improve the outcomes for an organization rather than just simply using it as a cost-cutting tool. Yes, they improved efficiency, but they also created more value for their customers, more value for the organization by doing their business model innovation and generated revenue for the business while providing more meaningful work for their people, which made them happier. So they covered pretty much all the components that we see on the screen. And that's the lens that we all need to use when it comes to using AI. The goal isn't to just do some work faster or to reduce headcount. The goal is to actually rethink what value can be created and delivered and how AI can improve the entire system of work across better value, sooner, safer, happier components. So that is our encouragement for you all today. If you don't see that happening in your organization, how can you start challenging things to unlock what AI can do for your organization?
Thanks, Ruma. I love that. I love that IKEA example. It's such a good one. It was making the rounds on LinkedIn a few weeks back. And what it triggered for me was we need to think more like Henry Ford was back in the day, because this is not about building a faster horse. And that's when our our thinking and our time and effort is thinking about efficiency. We're just optimizing the current. What we need to be in the headspace of is innovation and how might we build the car, because Henry Ford came up with that invention. And so then this is ultimately then about realizing value sooner, not just a sole focus on cost, and it really shifts the dynamics. So yeah, such a good case study. Thanks, Ruma. So if we get into then the patterns and anti-patterns then, and so what we'll do is we'll go through each component of the house. And so just so that for those of you not familiar with BBSSH language, a pattern is things to do more of, or things that will amplify or accelerate the outcome that you're trying to achieve. An anti-pattern is things to avoid doing. So we avoid doing them because it'll actually make your job a whole lot harder than it needs to be. So patterns are things to do, anti-patterns, things not to do. And this has been put together based on the learnings from the last 20 years, basically from digital transformation, as well as then the nuances for AI and what does that then mean. So let's get back into the house then. And let's start with the foundation and build our way up. So the first, again, around kind of mindset and behaviors, where this is about trust and kind of safe collaboration. So we know from digital transformations, from agile implementations, we know that it all starts off with mindset and behaviors. And we know then that to get the value from AI, the focus needs to be on 80% people, 20% process, and 10% tools. So we've already learned that the #1 success factor in order to change is when leaders lead and when they role model. We already know that culture change is required. We know that the #1 determinant of high-performing teams is psychological safety. And AI will amplify the need for psych safety because we need to be in constant experimentation and intelligent failure mode. So we already know that these are the patterns. From an anti-pattern perspective, we've learned that change doesn't happen when we just focus on process and tools, and when leaders don't change, or when leaders themselves don't use AI. What's come through recently is AI is actually being used as a bit of a threat, not as an incentive. And so this is what's, I guess, the examples as to what's happened there is because we've associated job cuts to AI. And so, for example, that happened when Atlassian made its job cuts. It was positioned as AI driven. My hypothesis is perhaps that actually maybe it was a result of, a poor strategy execution or decision making rather than actually AI. So kind of how are we thinking about shape-shifting our workforce and enhancing skills and products that we need to build? And in a recent event that we hosted with Marty Kagan, who's a global thought leader, recognized global thought leader in product, he shared some straight talk with us as well. And basically his straight talk was those people who are only task orientated are being exposed by AI, and they're serving themselves up to be AI-able. But those people that are highlighting the value of their insights, their experience, the judgments, they're reinforcing the human need. So there's something here around AI is being used as a threat. And so I think some are experiencing that threat, but what we need to flip is how do we make it an incentive, back to Ruma's point around starting off with intent and the balanced scorecard. So that's foundational component #1. So I might just pause there and say if there's any feedback or thoughts on this one from the group, or any builds, Mark and Ruma, from yourself as we're going. I'd like to invite conversation as we go.
Yeah, I was going to say, Joe, you put something in the chat. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think orgs are definitely using AI as an excuse for their org restructures and cost cutting, just because it's, the hot topic of the moment. Similarly, I think a lot of orgs did the same at the beginning of COVID, even though they didn't have the foresight of what was even going to happen. But I just in terms of mindset and behavior with my organizations, we've launched Claude, which is awesome and amazing, but just giving everyone access and telling everyone to use it and giving everyone some tools isn't really changing mindset and behavior. You know, and I looked at all of the pillars of the house, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of them, because I can just see so many failings, not just within my organization, but at others as well. The more and more that comes up on LinkedIn as well.
Thanks, Joe. And I think it's the org restructure connected to AI is become a thing. So whether that's the truth or not, to your point, yeah, I'm a bit dubious. I don't think it is. But yeah, so I think this is about how do we use the patterns, think about the culture and the mindset change required, get leaders to lead, and then create the safety required in order to then unlock the use of it. And that's then connected to the balance scorecard. Thanks for your build. So that was component number 2. Let's go to, sorry, that was component number 1. Let's go to component number 2. So this is all around purpose. So starting with the why and the what. So the patterns here in what we've already learned is that in order to succeed, we need to have a clear why. So one that motivates, one that's connected to your strategy. And it's here again because it needs to be a balanced scorecard of the success measures, as we've mentioned. When AI is connected to the purpose and the strategy, it's an amplifier, and it's a driver of that capacity and value creation. And AI is amplifying the need for feedback loops here. So as we're thinking about what we would use AI for, we're then trying it, and that then needs to then inform, further the why and the what. And so it's as our capabilities evolving, we're experimenting and we're working on what it's best used for, and that needs to continue because the AI technology itself is enhancing. So we need to have that in spades. The anti-patterns that we're seeing and things that we've already learned as well is when AI is for AI, being used for AI's sake, and that doesn't work, or it's the new cool tech. So this was our problem in 2025. Many boards, executive teams were driving AI adoption because it was a trend, and it was driven from keeping up with the trend rather than clarity on how is it actually going to help us. And so given kind of current economic pressures, sometimes AI is being seen as a quick fix or a relief in the bottom line, the cost pressure, but really this is a fallacy, and many experiments are not actually returning the benefits, and the promise of the 10x isn't there. So the anti-pattern here is when we're focusing just on short-term or quick win benefits, and defining the success by cost reduction or FTE savings, because that's when you're sprinkling AI kind of over the top of everything, rather than thinking about how might you then use it as a driver to redesign your core processes, and looking at how might you then look at the operating model changes that you actually then need to make in order to then unlock it. So the anti-pattern there is, or the so what is AI on a bad process will only make a bad process easier and faster to execute, which then makes it even more wrong than what it already was before. So purpose, kind of the why are you using it, balance scorecard, the what is it for, how do you evolve that based on experiments and feedback, and how are we thinking about not just tech implementation, but also the required changes holistically. So that's number 2. I might just pause there. Any thoughts, builds from Mark, Ruma, yourself, or from the group?
Not from me, but I noticed, Elizabeth, you've got your hand up if you wanted to go.
Yeah. So Maria, this one on the purpose and strategy execution, enabling the strategy, most of the companies I've seen are just letting AI loose for the people to play with. 2 questions on this one. Based on your guys' experience, how did you help them shift away from AI is just something to play with and productivity to something that's innovation or a real revenue generator? And do we have, apart from IKEA, do we have closer to home examples of people that are really using it for business benefit at that the value part? And how did you help them to shift their thinking away from just productivity, cost saving to more innovation and directly linked to the strategy?
So there were a handful of examples, and Elizabeth, I can dig them out for you around where AI is being used in kind of customer frontline, customer support processes from that perspective. So I think there's some really good use cases there. At the AI AFR summit the other week, Suncorp actually won the AI Innovation Award. So in terms of kind of examples closer to home, that's one. In terms of getting the right focus on those AI use cases connected into strategy, I don't know, Rima and Mark, did you have any builds that you wanted to add on that based on our experience?
I did, but we've actually got Evan on the call from Suncorp. Evan, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I was wondering if you've shared a little bit in the chat, but also in relation to the award. Are you comfortable to come off mute?
Sorry, I was multitasking. And what's the award?
I think we saw on LinkedIn there was something posted about Suncorp receiving an award in relation to AI. Marie, do you have a
AI
little bit
Builder
more
Award.
context?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Builder
so
Award. That's it, Evan. Yeah.
yeah, Suncorp AI Builder Award. So that's for one of the AI solutions that our AI delivery team delivered. And it was one that's closely kind of collaborated with the business to develop and embedded in the business process. So it's pretty good one, and the process how to deliver those is a great example of how to build an AI solution properly. Disclaimer, I'm not directly involved in that project, but I'm supporting that project to kind of assist them to measure the impact of AI adoption.
Thanks, Evan.
Great. Thanks, Evan. Joe, sorry, Andy, you've got your hand up. If you want
Sorry,
to
yeah,
follow up.
I appreciate time is limited, but I wondered whether there's any slight further detail on what the use case was behind that. And I think one of the questions I'm hearing is what are the examples of the actual use cases of AI success?
So
Other than IKEA.
So the examples, I think, Andy, are, I'm just trying to remember, I was at an AI conference last year in Vegas, where there were a handful of use cases. Some were like in a claims processing context. So thinking about how do we use AI to help us through that process. Another was like a customer experience interaction layer use case. Evan, I don't know if you know any more behind what the actual use case was.
Would it be fair to say at the moment when we struggle to grasp for these examples and we use terms like handful, the current situation is it is actually quite difficult to pinpoint. It's a very emergent landscape. I think is there an agreement in that at the moment? It is quite difficult to pinpoint successful use cases. We are still at the let's try things out and see what happens stage. I think we need to be quite open and honest about that, don't we?
Yeah.
Just for that one, I was just check what I can share, what I can't share, because I'm not directly kind of developing that, but at a high level, it is to help the claims advisors to find information easily, to summarize information easily, and that's embedded in their process. Therefore, the benefit is concrete. That's probably what I can share.
Thank you.
So I think, Andy, to your point, though, I think it is still very early, and I think it is still emergent. And so I think there is a being real about that, to your point. I think last year what we experienced was a whole proliferation of use case and experiments that didn't yield very much ROI, and that then became the problem. But I think those that are focused, those that are applying some of the patterns that we're talking about, are actually able to then get the right translation of that ROI and impact.
Yeah, Maria, if I can quickly jump in. another local example that was actually shared in the meetup, Sooner Safer Happier meetup just last month, was for Bendigo Kangan Institute, where the speaker, Dylan, he is the chief AI officer there, and he shared how the use cases were identified, and they were actually quite innovative in implementing AI chatbots and how they impacted the work and outcomes that they were doing. So we'll share the link to that recording in the chat now.
Yeah, great one, Rima. That's also another use case closer to home here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is around capability. And so here, because AI is revolutionary, this means that we need to then build capability at scale. So the patterns are how might we upskill all of our teams to leverage AI. But what this is meaning is that it needs to be both AI fluency as well as human skills, because AI is testing our humanness. So we've learned from digital transformation that we aren't quite really that good yet at reskilling. So this requires a shift in our thinking for leaders that think that we don't need to invest in learning and considering it as a nice to have and something that you do on your own time, to leaders then making a deliberate choice to invest teams' time into those activities so we can learn and then learn from each other and actually dedicate the time in the calendar to do that. And then so there's another element here around when we then use, and because the focus thus far has been AI from a productivity or an individual productivity enhancement, we need to then allow, if we've had that experimentation and people are doing that, we need to then allow the time that has been saved to then learn something else. So that's been a pattern that's emerged as well. And here the last in the last 6 months, the shift has been and will continue that AI is not just a tool, but AI is a teammate. So thinking the traditional rule of thumb in the past when designing a team was a 2-pizza team with 7 to 9 people in it. This is being challenged. So the ideal team size is now going to be much smaller. But it's smaller because we're amplifying our existing human capability with AI agents. So this actually will change how we need to think about team design. So those are the patterns, and those that are kind of on the front of thinking that are starting to lead the way. The anti-patterns is when we think of AI capability uplift as a one-time thing only, or it's an AI tech training course. Or that it should just be left to the tech teams to build, or that they're the only ones that need to be thinking about kind of AI fluency in those types of skills, or even going so far as outsourcing all of your AI delivery to a third-party delivery partner. AI needs to be for everyone, and it will redesign your core processes. And this is what creates the fundamental value that you then deliver to your customers, which you can't then outsource to a vendor. So capability at scale, and how do we then, there was a nice case study that was shared the other week around making that very much leader-led. So leaders leading how they're using AI themselves to then encourage the teams to then allow for experimentation within the team. And then moving that awareness and understanding then onto how might that then turn into kind of more formalized experiments that they might then run within the organization to then draw out those AI ROI benefits. So that's the component number 3. I might just check if there's any bills or any questions on this one, or I might keep going. Mark, anything that we should add?
Yeah, I was just going to say there is a question there around what the new team size should be, and you did start to touch on it, Maria. What I can share is I was recently doing some work with an organisation where we were starting to look into this, and through the earlier conversation we were having, you do have the choice around productivity or cost savings, But I think there's been a few lessons learned now around how that hasn't transpired in other organizations in the right way. So the path that we've gone down is actually thinking about what is a team. And there's a few things now. Teams used to be humans and systems, and that two pizza sized team that Marie kind of touched on. What we're actually seeing now is the redefinition of a team. And in this organization context, it's a team is equal to, yes, people and systems, but it's now also agents and tokens. And so where that kind of starts to take you now is, yes, smaller teams. So imagine you've had one team, you can now break it into 2 or 3 teams, and you can start thinking about throughput efficiencies that can be gained. But there's also a lens now into the cost of a team, because cost used to be people and systems, but now it's actually token consumption and cost of running agents as well. So there's just some learnings that are emerging in this space that some organizations are starting to do. So Pamela, there isn't an ideal team size just yet, but you do see the traditional 8 to 10 being able to broken up into a smaller teams with the right agents applied to it.
Thanks, Mark. So the next component is then technical excellence. And again, so those that are winning, what we've seen across sector are those that had already invested in their tech platforms, their data foundations, those that had already had really good engineering practices. And because the patterns here to kind of unlock AI even further are ones around continuous architecture. So this is where design evolves. So it evolves with having the right data, the right platforms, the right tools, and a connected ecosystem. But we need to have the right connected, integrated data with the right tech foundations to actually then unlock AI, because that means that we have connected workflows. And so when you then put AI on top, that's then where you get the power from it. And so in 2025, so I think we saw a proliferation of AI tools as well. So everyone was excited. Everyone started to procure AI tools that created some inefficiencies in tooling costs. So part of the pattern here is how do we think deliberately about the AI ecosystem that we are then creating to then coordinate investment so that we can then leverage not just economies of scale from the contracts that we have from the AI tools, but also with the AI agents that we're setting up. I think there is a real risk of having thousands upon thousands of AI agents within your organization that then need to be built, managed, maintained, that cost, that leverage tokens. So thinking about how do we do that in the best scalable way is then helpful. But then the anti-patterns here, maybe no surprise, would be big upfront architecture, needing to have it perfect before we actually start. So that's not going to work here anymore. So this is where it needs to be a little bit more emergent. But if we don't have the right data structure, if we don't have access to that, or if it's not real time, then that impacts our ability to then train the AI models. And when the AI ecosystem, when we then don't have a design and when it's fragmented, that means that it's then hard to have visibility. It's hard to then have consistent guardrails. It's disconnected the tools. So those are the key anti-patterns of that. So I might just pause there. Any builds, any observations from the group?
Ben, you had a great example in the chat. I don't know if it's purely related to the tech excellence one, but you're seeing some real opportunities and some really good things starting to emerge. Were you okay to come off mute?
Yeah, that's fine. So a couple of sectors. One's in the defense sector where they get audited every 6 to 12 months for compliance, for export control and various things. And another one is in the NDIS sector as well, where there's thousands of submissions coming in every week. But previously you do a sample size in preparation, like supervisors cannot get across all case notes and all transactions. But with AI, what we can do is put it up against the regulator's requirements and the language and etc. And the sample size is 100% now. and it's constantly throwing out like potential risks in any of these transactions in both those sectors going through, which then gets the human in the loop oversight. So it's throwing it out, prompting opportunities, but you've got a very, very proactive approach therefore. Then the education goes back in much more quickly. The education to something not being right comes in the next day, next working day, not in 6 months' time when I've forgotten what I'm doing as well. So it's having a really solid educational impact as well. It's not just AI for the sake of AI. It's there's lots of high value outcomes coming from it, and yeah, so that's very much to do with auditing and regulators, that high volume transactional activity where you just can't get enough coverage.
Elizabeth, I think thank you, Ben. Elizabeth, I think you've got your hand up.
Yeah, have you guys seen any example talking about technical excellence where we're at the stage that AI is designed in and not bolted in? Or we're still at the stage with AI like we were with risk and compliance previously, where we tried to inspect it in later? Do you have examples where it's part of the day zero thinking in design?
I can touch it a little bit for the organization that I was working with. Part of the engagement was twofold. It was looking at a key process, but as part of looking at the key process, it was actually helping them define the information architecture that underpins it. And so this was part of some of that day zero thinking, because there is governance associated with building agents and releasing agents and those kind of things. Is it just purely for personal productivity versus, is it going to touch customers, those kind of things. But then that starts to translate into, well, who can access the agent, user rights, data that it needs, integration with other systems. So I think it's still early, Elizabeth, but the organization that I was working with was actually starting from the position of what is the information architecture that each agent will need to be able to operate, but also who has permission to the data and then the agents. Does that make sense?
Oh, great. Thanks, Mark. Super helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so let's cover off number 5. So here, this is all around governance. And what we've learned from digital transformation is that we need to balance both speed and control. We can't have one over the other. And that's very much the case for AI too. So here, it's thinking about, and again, those organizations that are starting to think about safety being everyone's responsibility rather than just the risk team. And maybe, Elizabeth, this is a little bit to your point where AI, is it being bolt on to the side like risk, or is it how is it being embedded in? But actually here, it's how do we put in the controls built into the day-to-day, whether that's the way of working or whether that's the process re-engineering that we then need to do that then factors in AI as well. Because AI here will amplify risk, so security, privacy, and it will create new ones, so ethical, moral considerations, and it definitely makes the blast or the potential blast radius even bigger than before. So governance can't be reactive, and that won't work. It needs to be proactive. So shifting then from reactive oversight to early risk detection. But what this means is that we need then guardrails, we need lean practices, we need clear decision rights. In order to then do that. So this is from kind of stage gate controls, which is maybe how we would have governed delivery and execution in the past, to controls embedded in the flow of work. So those are the patterns. The anti-patterns here are the more traditional ways of governing that are more kind of command and control, that take away accountability from teams, decision by committees, and those steering committees that aren't actually meeting frequently enough. So those are the characteristics, effectively what I just mentioned there of a typical steer co. Putting more of those in to then govern your AI will actually will pull you back and slow you down. And people will find ways to get around them. And the last anti-pattern here is late engagement with risk, compliance, and audit when it comes to AI. So in my very first enterprise transformation experience back at Bank West, actually in 2017, I learned that risk needed to be my best friend. And this was all around kind of digital transformation and operating model change. And otherwise we weren't going to be successful in re-engineering how we needed to get things done. So governance is one of those that is either going to be a blocker if you've not got the right patterns, or an amplifier. I might just pause there. Any builds on that one from anyone, or any questions?
I've got a quick example, something that happened at Pocket OS back in April 2026. They were running Claude AI agents powered by Claude, because that was the correction made to the article. And that agent decided to delete the entire database as well as the backup without any consultation, even though explicit rules were written when the agent was created. So that's a really good example of how governance and risk play an important role in this space, because even to a human being, we're never going to let one person decide if they can delete a database. So we can't let AI decide that as well. And I'll put a link in the chat for that case study.
Thanks,
And I
Ruma.
think, Joe, you've got your hand up as well.
Yes, I'm just interested. I've just found out recently that there's automated decision making coming through on the 1st of December that's becoming needs for businesses. So if you're using AI or any other type of automation, regardless of whether it's got a human oversight or check. So have you come across that at all yet? And how is that impacting on organizations to get ahead of that?
I've
When
not
I
come
saw it
across
in the
that
chat-
one. I don't know, Mark, if you have.
No, I was going to say it hasn't come across my desk at the moment, and even the people we're talking to at the moment, it hasn't popped up. So I've actually written down, Joe, to go find out a little bit more about this.
I'll put a link to a friend of mine who's just written a white paper for the not-for-profit sector. It's up on LinkedIn. I'll put a link to that paper. It's a really great summation of what's actually happening there, and definitely worth consideration for organisations. There's more rules apparently coming in September, but I'll put a link to his paper in LinkedIn on there.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe.
That's great. So we've got two more components to go. So number 6 is delivery approach. So the patterns here, and I think what we've learned is traditional project management approaches, they weren't aligned with digital work, and that was the driver for the rise of agile and more agile approaches. That's not going to work with AI. So how might we think about kind of a think big, start small, learn fast mindset that then guides delivery? Experiments is the operating default. So how do we make those visible? How do we integrate those into the core portfolio of work? So I reflect back on the start of digital adoption. I'm not sure if anyone was involved with any innovation labs. I certainly was back in the early days. And so what I learned from that didn't work was innovation on the side. And that's because it's not then embedded into actually the strategy and strategy execution together with core projects, together with BAU. So AI on the side, again, is not going to work. That would be an anti-pattern. And the thing that AI is going to amplify is that continuous delivery with the rapid feedback loops. So our ability to think big, but then to slice things down into those small increments, and then to be able to orchestrate that, to then be able to deliver on the right value and the right outcomes. And then for us as leaders and teams to then be okay with not exactly knowing how we're going to then get there, because the experiment will then inform the next step. Like, that's effectively the pattern here. So even in what I've just said there's quite a bit of a mindset shift with that. And so the anti-patterns, is when we define success based on milestones and outputs, not outcomes, and those AI initiatives then being run kind of in isolation, rather than as part of your core strategy delivery. So that's the key bits with number 6. I might just finish off the last component here and then see if there's any reflections on these two itself. But basically, continuous improvement is the last, is at the top. It's ultimately what we need to then become. That's the continuous learning, continuous improvement, and not accepting status quo, because AI is evolving that, and it's challenging the core of our businesses to improve, and in fact disrupting some core business models as well. So the patterns here are teams that reflect, that adapt, that improve as part of that delivery rhythm. That's now what it means to become high performing. It's not a separate activity. They're optimizing on the BVSSH measure, so the balanced scorecard that we mentioned. They're celebrating things like full learnings or failure learnings, and those are then okay to be shared. Amy Edmonston in her recent book talks about intelligent failures. So if you haven't read that, I'd recommend it. That kind of mindset is what we're going to need to have. And improvement needs to then be driven by data, and teams encouraged to test, learn, and share those learnings openly. And so the more that we AI will amplify the need for that. So teams need to be intrinsically motivated to experiment. So that's where we need to reward and recognize. And there are examples of organizations that are doing exactly that. So then the anti-patterns here are treating AI as a one-off initiative or separate innovation pillar. It's localized learning. So if you don't quite have, types of communities of practice or shared learning mechanisms across your organization, you're going to have pockets of AI that happen across without that shared learning, which does create a bit of a waste that way. And the last, and I learned that actually in the early days of ANZ, the new ways of working transformation. And so the last anti-pattern here is teams might then avoid using AI because they're actually afraid to get started, and that's something you don't want as well. So that's the last component of the house. And I might just pause there and see. I think, Pamela, your personal opinion is that what we've been discussing in this community is even more important than ever. I couldn't agree more. Any other reflections from the group? And I might just share what we think the next steps might be, and pause there to see if there's any builds or any reflections and adds. But I hope that was gave some thoughts, inspirations, maybe a way to think about this. Feel free to read the report and reach out to any of the three of us. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you everyone for your time today.